Well, the JSE is firmer so far today, with global markets mixed as investors await fresh data. Let's unpack these numbers with Petri Redelinghuys, who is a trader and co-founder at Herenya Capital Advisors. Petri, it's great to talk to you as always. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Shall we begin with the relationship between South Africa's major publishers and Google, apparently turning hostile and in fact may trigger an aggressive face-off between these parties at the Competition Commission's Media and Digital Platforms Market Inquiry, which is getting underway. It's a mouthful, but what's going on there?
Yeah, so this is quite a complex story, and I think this inquiry carries on is going on right now. It's kind of streaming live, and will be doing so for a couple of days. Look, I don't really know how to position myself here. I think that essentially what's happening is our media industry is taking on the likes of Google and Meta or Facebook and other digital platforms for essentially encroaching on their territory. And one has to agree that the prevalence of what's often deemed clickbait on some of these social media platforms and sort of search consoles and stuff isn't necessarily always congruent to what's actual factual news. And often from a user experience, things parading as news on Facebook, for example, is actually, lead generation for a pyramid scheme. And you can report these things to Facebook and they just tell you that it doesn't go against their community guidelines. So Facebook is making massive profits, for example, from essentially pushing fake news, right? So that's one issue. The other issue is that essentially, and I think this is more what the focus of the inquiry is about, as well as the position of the South African sort of media industry, is that, our media industry does a huge amount of work. Like you guys, for example, do a huge amount of work to do the journalism and investigative work necessary in order to find stories and to bring to light real, actual news events. And then those are just aggregated by sort of Google's platform and pushed out to users. And in a lot of those cases, the news agency is cut out of the loop. And this is already a very challenging environment to work in. The sort of news media sector, if you will, has been under severe financial pressure for the last, I want to say, almost 2 decades now, and it's continuing to get worse. However, it seems as though the only guys really benefiting from this is Google. I mean, people like yourselves and MoneyWeb and whoever else are doing all the work, and Google's reaping all the rewards. And, what's interesting is that South Africa is not the first country to do this. There are other countries that have taken them on, Australia, Indonesia, for example. They found, I think it was in Sweden. I just want to have a look at the right numbers here so that I don't give you the things. In Switzerland, they found that as much as 40% of what Google earns on a monthly basis in Switzerland came from monetizing local news publishers' news content. So it's almost 40% of their revenue in that entire country is coming from monetized news content from other publishers, where the other publishers loses out on the opportunity to earn those funds, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, this is potentially massive. And what Google essentially says is, look, we refuse to give away any information. The inquiry wants to know, or at least the media industry wants to know, how much are you earning from South Africa? And Google blankly refuses to give them the answer, saying that the information that they're requesting isn't relevant to the inquiry.
Yeah.
So I think this is a big story to watch. I think that we've seen other countries, some European countries and some sort of Oceania region countries, Australia, New Zealand, Indonesia, have already passed laws and legislations to force Google, even the United States, to force Google to share revenues generated from news with the relevant publisher, original publisher of that news story. Google has in every case challenged the calculation of this and said that they don't want to do it, but those legislations have been passed nonetheless. And I think it would probably be a very good thing for local industry to do the same. If we could pass some regulations to force Google to pay back some of the gains that they make from the hard work of our journalists, I think that would be fantastic for the news industry as a whole.
Yeah, we're absolutely keeping a close eye on how this unfolds at the Competition Commission, and I wonder whether that precedent in other parts of the country could be used in this particular case here as it pertains to South Africa. But Bidvest, Petri, reporting a 5% rise in headline earnings for the first half, with 5 of its 7 divisions apparently reporting double-digit trading profit growth.
Yeah, so Bidvest has been, investing in some sort of expansionary projects, trying to. I think they invested something like 3.9 billion rand, somewhere around there. And this is, despite challenging conditions and the massive investments and stuff that they've made, they are starting to see the benefit from that. And I think what we're seeing actually is a bit of a theme here. A lot of numbers being reported today from companies across the spectrum. Bidvest obviously being a diversified industrial, if you will. Particularly just to retract or to take a few steps back. One of the investments they made, for example, recently was in expanding their cleaning services and hygiene services footprint across the world, right? And this is starting to pay off for them a little bit. And I think that it's encouraging to see that a lot of companies are starting to come out and actually saying, look, despite difficult conditions, we are seeing some earnings growth. And a lot of this is obviously due to some capital discipline where they're containing costs really well. But also there's a bit of an uptick in business, which is good to see.
Yeah, which is always good news. Merafe Resources also has a trading statement out. What are those numbers looking like?
So Merafe also saying that they're going to be, and there's 2 things really stand out there. One is chrome sales is slightly higher, and the second thing, it's good news for them, not so good for us. The rand-dollar exchange rate has really slid, has weakened quite a bit. And this obviously has a positive impact on those exporters of commodities. So with strong export sales, growing export sales, at least for Morocco, as well as the weakening rand-dollar exchange rate, that's resulted in significantly stronger sort of results for them. If I have a look at the share price, for example, that currently is trading up some 8.66% on the day. So market really enjoying this. Yeah.
And then Robex, am I pronouncing that correctly, Petri, expecting headline earnings for the year ended December to rise also by as much as around 10%.
Yeah, so your guess is as good as mine on pronunciation. I always thought it was Raubex, but it could be Robex, who knows?
Yeah.
This obviously is an industrial, not really industrial, it's a construction business and construction supply business, really sort of focused on infrastructure development. And what they noted is that, the tendering season, if you will, has gone relatively well for them. They won a number of tenders, which has given them a solid order book, and puts them in a strong position to, forecast an increase in earnings. Unfortunately, the stock, not the world's most liquid share, so it's up about 1% on the day, but it hasn't really been trading massively. I think what is encouraging, though, is that infrastructure spending at least remains stable to, stable enough to support the local industry.
This is an interesting one, Petri. SPAR, the wholesaler, is set to offer loans to corporate-owned shops that need financial assistance. What do you make of this?
Look, I don't know if this is good news or not, right? So the numbers I have is it's lending some 250 million to shops in Namibia and 114 million to shops in South Africa. And these are obviously all the corporate-owned ones. So these are the ones that are not owner-operated, if you will, so the ones that SPAR Group owns. Obviously, they're all independent little businesses, but they're owned by the group and that kind of thing. So it is a bit of a, I guess it's not a huge amount of money that they're lending out. But what is worrying is that how many of these essentially branches or SPAR group, stores are not performing. So the question is, how much of their business or market share have they lost to the likes of ShopRite with their Checker 60/60 initiative, and how are they going to fight back? And also, how are these loans going to be used? I saw some stories going around about SPAR really wanting to push into the delivery space using particularly electronic vehicles or electronic scooters, which, as we know, are very efficient over the long term. EVs are on a very long-term scale, cheaper to run than combustion engine sort of vehicles. So I think that could be potentially what the loans are used for. The purchasing of these EV scooters and the hiring of staff and creating the infrastructure to start doing these deliveries. I don't know. Yeah. I guess we'll have to see. But what is a bit of a worrying situation is that, if these big super spa down the road from you needs a loan, it's probably not because it's doing really well, right? Seems to be in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it is on the back foot insofar as the delivery space is concerned. Absolutely. Petri Redelinghuys, let me thank you for your time this afternoon. He is a trader and founder of Herenya Capital Advisors as we give you your regular market update.